¿qué tal? Soy Dani Mantilla y estamos aquí en el Festival de San Sebastián, en el set audiovisual interior de Kinótico, que patrocina Repsol en el Hotel María Cristina. Hoy nos acompaña un director brasileño que fue premiado en Cannes y que ahora viene a competir en Perlas con el agente secreto. Kleber Mendonça Filho, welcome to San Sebastián.
Muito obrigado.
I have to say, well, I already told you, but I'm going to repeat it in front of the camera. I loved your film in Cannes. I was so surprised by how much life was within those minutes. I loved it. I wanted to ask you, why did you want to go back to those years of Brazil? Because I think you were like 9 years old. What was the idea behind that moment?
Well, thank you very much. I worked for 7 years in a film called Retratos Fantasmas. It's like an essay film or a documentary. And I was exposed to so much stuff, so many photographs, so many films, so many pieces of newspaper from the past that went into the research of that film, that I began to feel very emotionally strong to write a fiction piece taking place in the past. And I chose 1977 because it's probably the first year that I can actually remember. I have memories of 77 and 78. I also think that the 70s is an interesting time for cinema. My first connection to cinema came in the 70s as a child, and I was very lucky to see back in the day on general release, Superman the movie, which I think is a very cool film still. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which I think is an incredible film. And these films, they taught me how to love films in a way, and I felt very much at home. That's the beginning of the story. Of course, there are many more elements.
I was very surprised when I read that you said that you felt this was your first political film. When I have watched your films, I think politics is everywhere. I'm thinking, for example, of Aquarius, Doña Clara here in Spain, which felt really political. But how do you feel? Why do you feel this is especially political? This secret agent.
Well, I have to say that I never make a film or write a film thinking that it might be political. I grew up watching, Oliver Stone and Costa Gavras, who made political films, and I think they are more classically political. But every time you show life being lived in society and the logic of society, and if you have your own point of view on society, you become political in a way as a citizen. And it's the same thing with a film. This film is probably, in my mind, political because it goes back in time to look at the logic of history and the logic of Brazil, my country, or the world, if you will. And Brazil, I think, changed a lot since 1977, but in the last 10 years, it went back, as in we had a big going back in time, like maybe 40 years, with the far right gaining strength in Brazil and electing a president who happened to be a complete disaster, of course. And now we're getting up again and moving forward, with an idea of democracy through Lula's third government. So that's why I probably think that this is a clearly political film, because it's very much about living life in society and facing the obstacles that people give you.
I have to say that I think that you're very smart casting your films, because with certain characters you need something else, like a star power that, for example, Sonia Braga had for Clara. And she wasn't doing barely movies in that time, and Wagner was working mainly in Hollywood. It was like 10 years maybe that he hadn't done a Brazilian movie. What did you think of him for this character?
Wagner Moura is a great actor. He's incredibly charismatic, which means he's a star. The camera loves him. Um, he has this quality that he attracts empathy. You identify with him at a classic hero level in classic cinema, I think. Something that James Stewart had, or great actors.
Tom Hanks in the 90s, for example, with
Tom
American
Hanks
films
in
in
the
a way.
90s, yes. It's that quality of identifying with a character. And he's a great person. He's a good friend now after the film. He was a friend, of course, before we even worked together, because we went through some bad moments during the far right reign of Brazil, artists and um, for some reason the far right doesn't like artists, doesn't really identify with freedom of speech and things like that. Real freedom of speech, not the ones they. So we worked together, and I wrote the film specifically for him, or it was tailor made for him. And I'm very happy with what the film is bringing him now. A lot of recognition.
I have to say that I was surprised by the amount of details that there are in a story that maybe you didn't need them, but I feel from the other side of the screen that you wanted to have fun with this film, like the set piece of the hairy leg, the cat, and so many things that I didn't expect. But the biggest one of all was the climax of the film, because I never thought that the film was going to end that way, and that you were going to see the climax through other characters. I don't want to say anything else, but what was your creative process for making more complex and more fun this series film?
Well, thank you, but there is no other way, I think. The only way to make a film is to have fun and to be excited about what you're doing. And I don't usually save ideas for the next film. I can make way for new ideas to come in, because I really believe that a good book, a good novel, a good film has the logic of life. The problem with is that many films, they have only the logic of Hollywood or the logic of film. Um, and I think that you can digress. You can say, yeah, but I remembered something, and then you can tell a story, and you can always go back. The question is, does it work? I have to make sure that it works, because otherwise the film will collapse. But I am completely open to using what I believe are good ideas, for the film. And if they communicate with life and the logic of life, I'm completely open to using as many ideas as I can. The hairy leg, is an urban legend from the 1970s, and I always found it fascinating because I first heard about the hairy leg from my mother reading the newspaper, and it's such a crazy, bizarre idea, and it is so funny and frightening and violent that it's an idea that has always been in the back of my mind, and I finally found the right film to use it.
Had anyone ever filmed that before in a Brazilian film or TV show?
The hairy leg is very much present in local culture. It was quoted once in a great song from the 1990s by Chico Sainz, Nação Zumbi. It was drawn in many cartoons and drawings in newspapers in the 70s. And it was the subject of a short documentary, but never shot like
Yep.
like a exploitation uh, stop motion little epic. No.
How hard it was making this film within the structure of the Brazilian industry? Because uh, it looks like a very big film, and the art direction, the production design, the costume design is breathtaking. How was doing that with I assume not much money?
The film cost 5 million euros, which is my biggest film, and we did it much like artisans. You know, it was not an industrial process. It was done in Recife, where I live, where I come from. I have an amazing crew. You know, Thales Junqueira, art direction, Evgenia Alexandrova, photographer, Rita Azevedo, costume designer, Emilie Lesclos, producing. It was just a great production team, and we did it in the best way possible. It was like almost handmade, you know, like art like artisans, really. And I love the whole process. And it is one of the biggest films in Brazil. And I'm happy that it looks big. Some
It looks
American,
bigger than 5 million for sure.
yeah, some American, some American producer. He said 25. This is a little less.
Talking
So
about, sorry.
I'm happy with what's on the screen.
Would you like to do, for example, a film in America with bigger budgets? Because you speak English.
Well, of course, I could do a film in France, in Spain, or in the US. The problem is the thing is finding the right project and me having control over the film, because I could never make a film and allow whoever to have control over my film, you know, from the final cut to the sound and to the casting choices and also to the, you know, to how I work. So for me, it's I want to be happy. So if I make a film like The Secret Agent in Recife with my people, there are more chances to be happy than to give yourself to another experience where you don't have control. If I find the right project with control, yes.
How are you dealing with all the expectations and talks about the film being in the Oscar race, the awards season, which can be tricky, but at the same time, it's a way to keep films alive for 6 months or 8 months, because otherwise they would disappear in a few weeks.
Yes, I think The Secret Agent is getting a lot of attention, a lot of lights, spotlights. Um, I think the film has become quite big and prestigious over the last few months since the Cannes Film Festival. And I'm here to work with the film. Where the film goes, I go after it, you know. I'm happy to be screening the film, talking about the film, talking to you, and I want to see where it goes. Sorry, I was about to sneeze. Um, I think it's every country I go, it seems to communicate quite well with the local logic and local politics. You know, I was in the U.S. for Telluride, and I was in Los Angeles, and there is an interesting connection to to what's happening in the U.S. right now. And today, some colleagues, friends from critics, Spanish critics, they said that it reminds them of the way Spain has developed its own relationship to its history and Franco, you know. So I'm happy with the film, very happy. You know.
You were talking about the dark years of Brazil we luckily have left behind. What was your reaction to the news of Bolsonaro this week? The conviction.
When he goes to prison,
Yeah. Well,
I think it's justice. Yeah, Bolsonaro has committed a very serious number of crimes, and they all have overwhelming evidence to prove that he's a criminal. And he was tried by the Supreme Court Justice, and he got 27 years and 3 months. And I hope he goes to jail very, very soon. And I think it's justice. And right now Brazil is having an interesting moment because it's behaving very much like the democracy that it is and that it should be. You know.
I do hope that, well, I think we have to sum up because there are things happening all the time here in San Sebastián. But we would like to finish with one question we like to ask our guests is, I know you are, and you have been all your life a cinephile, but what film would you recommend to your 18-year-old self? Maybe one you discovered later in life?
It's such a difficult question to answer.
Or a good film to watch when you are 18, maybe?
I mean, it's hard for me to answer because I was watching every film I could when I was 18. So it's not like I only, like Paul Schrader, for example, he says that he only began to watch films at 18, I think. He spent his early years without watching nothing, no films. But
Well, don't worry about the
Yeah.
question. How did you start watching films? Because you said that by 18 you were doing like Crazy Man.
yeah,
What was your first connection to cinema?
my first connection to cinema was actually being taken to the cinema when I was a little child. My mother, she's responsible for many trips to the cinema. And in that time, there was no VHS, no video. It was only television and cinema. So that was how it all began. When I was 18, I was going to the cinema 4 or 5 times a week and watching 4, 5, or 6 tapes on VHS a week. So I was watching a lot of films at 18.
Thank you, Kleber. Enjoy San Sebastian and everything that happens with the film the following months. And again, congratulations.
Muito obrigado.
Seguimos con más entrevistas aquí en Kinótico, en este set en Hotel María Cristina, patrocinado por Repsol. Hasta pronto.